Welcome to Kevin Deal Photography, where I take you on my journey through photography. On today's episode, I'm going to teach you how to use multiple triggers and multiple cameras on the same lighting setup. Welcome to today's episode. If you're not familiar with Kevin Deal Photography, I do gear reviews, tips, techniques, and tutorials, and I dive into film. If any of that sounds interesting to you, click the subscribe button below. So I'm sure many of you watching today's episode are curious as to why you would need to shoot with multiple triggers, and some of you already know why you want to use multiple triggers, but you're trying to figure out how to do it. That's what we're going to cover in today's episode. So let me explain to you why I shoot with multiple triggers. I like to shoot on both digital and film, and sometimes I like to use different digital cameras for different types of shots. It all depends, of course, on what kind of shoot we're doing. Sometimes I have shoots where we're going to mix up some really fast-paced stuff and some really fine art stuff. For my fast-paced stuff, I like to use a Canon EOS R5. It works really well in a fast-paced environment, and a lot of my fashion and commercial shoots where the model's flow posing and reacting off of the flash, this is the camera and the tool that I choose to fulfill that job. Sometimes, even within the same shoot, I like to do fine art stuff, and for that, I prefer to use my Fuji GFX. I also mentioned film. My primary film camera in the studio is my Mamiya RB67. But sometimes I also like to use my Mamiya C330. So anyway, it's kind of inconvenient to swap triggers around between cameras. I just want to stay in the moment, pick up the camera, and take the shot and have the power settings be the same. The only thing I really have to pay attention to is what my aperture's at, and I typically shoot at f8 or f11, and I leave my cameras there when I'm in the studio. Another thing to keep in mind is that if you're fiddling around with your trigger and swapping it between cameras, that takes time. Sometimes things aren't synced properly, and now your talent is getting bored or getting out of their groove, and that hurts the quality of your shoot. So today, I'm going to do my most extreme example of 3 cameras and 3 flash triggers. Most of you watching this probably would never need to use more than 2, but I figured if you know how to do 3, you can definitely do 2. So here's an example of me actually using 3 cameras and 3 triggers on the same session to achieve 3 different looks. I was helping Gabby Tropea update her portfolio. She's a talented model out of Austin. I wanted everything to work seamlessly. I just wanted to pick up a camera and go. But I'm sure a lot of you are watching this and wondering how I pull this off. Let me take you back to my YouTube studio and show you how. So what I do is I use the Godox X2T. Flashpoint also makes the exact same trigger. If you're not familiar, Godox and Flashpoint are the same company with a lot of their products. And the X2T, I believe is called the R2 on Flashpoint. And they're the same trigger. So if you have one Godox trigger and one Flashpoint trigger, it'll all work together. As a matter of fact, in today's example, I'm going to show you 2 of this exact same trigger, one for Canon and one for Fuji. And then I'm going to show you a Flashpoint trigger that I also have. And I'll show you how they all work together. And I'm sure if you don't have Godox or Flashpoint and you're using a different company's trigger, I'll bet you the same principles still apply. So first, you need to determine which trigger you want to be your master trigger. I call it my Grandmaster Flash. A lot of you youngsters probably don't get that joke. But I always choose my Canon because I usually shoot really fast with it. I'm changing it up on the fly a lot. So I just control everything off of this X2T, and then I have the other two become the slave. It doesn't matter which one you choose to be the master and which one you choose to be the slave. Maybe you're primarily a Sony shooter or primarily a Fuji shooter. Whatever you shoot on the most is what I recommend you make as your Grand Master Flash. For the Godox X2T for my Fuji, and by the way, they're designated by X2TF for Fuji and X2TC for Canon. I'm sure it's like S for Sony and other brands, but the same principles apply to you. So what you do is you go into your menu and you scroll down until you see something that says shoot. When you see something that says shoot, you click on that and then you scroll down to app. When you put this trigger in app mode, it's now in a slave mode where that Canon camera that I just set up as my master, anytime I change my power settings of my lights on the Canon and I fire something from the Fuji, it will send the exact same power settings to those lights. So if I'm shooting my key light at full power on my Canon and then I shoot it on my Fuji, it's going to trigger that key light at full power. Now, if I go over to my Canon and I take it down to quarter power, the next shot I fire from my Fuji will also be at quarter power. Next, I have this Flashpoint FPRRR2SPT. Really long name, I don't know why. The only difference on this guy is instead of going to that menu and then scrolling down to the shoot, you just hold this GR button, and from there you can scroll into app mode. And now you're in app mode on the Fuji and my film camera, my RB67, sporting the awesome shirt for it. And then I have the Canon being my master. So I also have this Flashpoint 8100 just chilling here right now. So I'm going to shoot my film camera right now. On my Canon, I set it at full power. So we're going to shoot this at full power and it triggers. Now I'm going to take it down to like let's just go to like 1/64th power. Okay, we're at 1/64th power right now. And I'm shooting on this and it's a lot less bright than it was. Now I'm going to take it right back up to full power. There we go. Looking at the back of this guy, he's also at full power, so it's all communicating. And now it goes off at full power, and I'm pretty much blind from that guy, but I wanted to make sure you saw it fire and see the example. So I had my film camera trigger, and this is important because film is super expensive, and I don't like to waste shots. So a lot of times I'll take a practice shot in my studio on one of my digital cameras. I go, yeah, that looks awesome, and then I just duplicate the settings. I'm like, okay, at a f11 with the power at this power on the flash, it's going to look like this. My lighting looks like about that. And then I pull out the film camera and then I take the picture. But just to make sure it's all working, let's pull out the Fuji. Let's zoom in on something and let's see. Oh, there it goes. Full power. So I am now using 3 cameras and I'm triggering the same light. So as you can see from the examples that I shared, I showed you shots that I took from that session. The Canon was in control of everything. The Fuji and the Mamiya RB67 were in app mode, and I had consistent lighting throughout my set. I wanted to thank Gabby Tropea for participating in today's episode. Check out her Instagram. She's an incredibly talented model. I thank all of you who watched this episode today. If you found this to be useful, click the subscribe button below. I appreciate your support. I appreciate your comments, your suggestions. And until next time, I'll talk to you later. Bye.